Well, yeah, I'm not seeing any examples right off the bat here to work with, but we'll use BloodHound to find one here ultimately. But so when we're counting here, I'm going to change the numbers here. So right, this would be bar number 1 as an up bar, bar number 2, bar number 3, bar number 4, etc. as an up bar. And so what Jerry's wanting to look for is on bar number 3 or bar number 4, look for volume. Look for a volume spike, or you could look for a volume spike. So that could either you could either be using a volume moving average like I have, or you could just use a fixed volume as well. Let's see here. Yeah, let's use this. So we could just put something like that on there and just pick a volume. Yeah, let's use 100. Yeah, we'll just make this nice and clean. There we go. Let's just go with 100, like so. There. All right. Right. So it doesn't matter if you're using a volume moving average or some kind of fixed value here. Either way, we're looking for a volume, right, that exceeds that amount. That exceeds that amount on something like the 3rd or the 4th bar, or whatever bar you're looking for. Could be maybe the 2nd bar. You're looking for a volume spike there. Right? So that is the question here. So with that, let's get BloodHound open, and we'll get started. All right. So first thing you want to do, right, when you're starting to build a new system here, is save a file name. All right, a bunch of 1s in today's date. There. All right, so let's start with a bar direction solver here. The first requirement is that 4 bars in a row are needed here. All right, so with the bar direction, and I'm going to change the name to 4 bar direction there. And then in the number of bars, here, let's increment that up to 4. Right. And there we go, right? So the first 3 bars, there's no output because obviously you haven't counted to 4 yet. And once you get to the 4th bar, then you get a confirmation from the bar direction that yes, there's been at least 4 bars in a row. And of course, with Renko bars, that just keeps on going and going and going, right? So obviously on something like a minute chart, it's going to be more intermittent, as to when you get a short output versus a long output. All right, so let's see. All right, so that's the easy part. So now, let's see. So now you need something that's going to identify bar number 1. And so as I mentioned, I'm just going to use a reversal bar as bar number 1 here, right? Yeah, it's pretty typical for Renko systems there. So to find those reversal bars, we're going to use the inflection solver here, right? And simply put, an inflection on a chart is either reversing up or reversing down, right? You can't inflect left to right on a price chart, right? That's just not how price charts work. So there you go. So really an inflection for charting purposes is just up or down. And so we'll look at price reversing up or down. And so we'll just look at the closing price of the bar, and there we have it, right? So you get a reversal up bar, you get a long output, reversal down bar, you get a short output. There we go. All right. So now we need to find, the 3rd and the 4th bar here. Right? So to do that, we're now going to need a function node here. So we're going to need to use the signal counter to do that. All right, let's see. I'll keep it down there for now. And let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. All right, so what are we counting up to? Let's count up to number 3. And your look back period at least has to be equal or larger than your counting to period. Yeah, so if you notice that if I increase the counting up to 10, the look back period is going to match that minimum number there. Well, 9, sorry. There you go, 10. All right. So, yeah, so there, so you can't have a look back period that's actually less than what you're counting up to. You know, so that should make sense there as to why that is. So anyways, let's put it back to 3. And let's just type in 3. There we go. And, oh, actually, sorry. We want to actually connect that. Hold on. Actually, we just need a regular bar direction solver. Sorry. So let's just add a regular bar direction solver. There we go. So you can see that, in a sense, the signal counter is doing essentially the same thing, right, as what the bar direction solver is doing. So we could use a bar direction solver instead of the signal counter. You know, you're going to get the same functionality. So, you know, quite often, you know, there's two ways to achieve the same result. So whether you're going with the signal counter, or we could use the bar direction here. So let me just kind of show that again, right? So this four bar direction, right? So remember, I got the number of bars set to 4, right? Is identifying when we get to the 4th up bar or the 4th down bar, and this bar direction with the signal counter, which is set up to find the 3rd bar, right? It's doing the same thing. So it's identifying when we get to, let's connect that up. There we go. Right, so when we get to the 3rd bar, right, the 3rd up bar or the 3rd down bar, right? So we're getting the same result there. So it could do it either way. But Jerry would like to be able to adjust the values there. So maybe sometimes he might want to find, he might want to be looking for that volume spike on the 3rd bar or the 4th bar, or maybe the 2nd bar and the 3rd bar, right? So yeah, so that's kind of why I went with the signal counter here, is because you can go in and adjust the numbers there. And let's also put the number in here. There we go. All right, so there we go. So we've identified the 3rd bar. And let's see here. And I'm going to copy this. And there you go. Paste this down. And this signal counter here is going to be finding the 4th bar. So we'll increment the counting up to there to number 4. There. Connect that in like that. Now, we need to, since we only want to check the volume, right, on either this 3rd bar or 4th bar, we need to prevent the output here as well, right? So all of this long output here needs to be turned off as well. So we can do that simply with a signal blocker, like so. And so let's see, blocking for, my guess is that if we block for 50 bars, it's probably really doubtful that you ever get a run of Renko bars longer than 50 bars. So 50 bars I would think is good enough. However, you should always kind of check to see if 50 bars is enough to block for. let's just do a quick scan here. Yeah, so every time the Renko bars change direction, right, we're only getting one signal on the third bar, and for that rest of that run, right, we're not getting any more signals there. Oh, here we go. So here's a good reason why we checked. So look at this. All right. So we had an up bar, and then we had another down bar, right? So the counting restarts, but we don't have a signal on this third bar right here. Right. So what I haven't gotten to yet is I haven't gotten to looking at the resets here. Let's see. So we're not. Yeah. Let's see. No, we are going to use the reset signal. Are we? Let's see. No, I don't think we need to use that. We could use the reset signal here, but I'm going to use instead the where is it? Input no signal. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So the input no signal is the one we could use. We could use, again, there's several ways we could reset the signal blocker, so that we get the next signal going through. For example, we could use the inflection, right? This inflection signal here, right? So when we get this up signal, we could use this long signal to reset the signal blocker. All right, let's take a look at the signal blocker again. And there. All right, so what I just did is I turned on the output here. It says actively blocking. I set it to like 0.2. So we can actually see on the chart when the signal blocker is blocking, right? So this is telling us that the signal blocker is actually blocking signals coming through here, right? So right here, it's blocking long signals. And then once a short signal comes through, then it starts blocking short signals. And we can see that the blocking turns off when it gets to this up bar. And that is because let's look at what's going into the signal blocker. All right, we have all these short signals, right? These continuous short signals. And then when we get to this up bar, right, there is no signal, right? There's an absence or no signal. And so now if you recall, for the reset, the one I'm using is input no signal. And there we go. Those three bars have no signal. So as soon as we get that reversal bar in the opposite direction, boom, there's no signal. So I'm just simply using that, right? So I could use the reset signal and then take the inflection solver and connect it into the reset connection point right here, right? So actually that would be reset opposite signal is the one we'd use for that instead. Sorry. Yeah, right. Because remember that up bar generates a long signal, but we want to reset the short signals. So this long signal as a reset for the shorts, this long is opposite of the shorts. So that would be the one. But just to keep it kind of simple here, we'll just use the input no signal. So obviously whenever there's an up bar, there's the signals, the signals going into the input, there is no signal, so they stop. So all right, so let's connect that up there. Okay, so there we go, right? Third bar, there we go, third bar and third bar. So yeah, so now we kind of know it's working properly there. All right, so let's kind of get rid of that. And so I'm going to need the same thing again down here. So let's copy this and paste. There we go. Right, and there we go. So now we're identifying the fourth bar in a row. Okay, so that is our basically our bar number identifier there. So now we just need to build the logic here that identifies whatever type of volume spike you're looking for here. So let's zoom out a little bit. So to do that, we're going to use a comparison solver. Right. So we're comparing volume to either some kind of fixed number, or we can compare the volume to another indicator. Right. In this case, it would have to be the volume SMA or the volume MA indicator. Right. And C is the volume, a bigger number, right, or greater number than our fixed value or the volume moving average there. So in the comparison, let's give this a name here. All right, so I'll just kind of call it volume spike there to keep it simple. So for input A, let's just use the volume input there. You know, you could go use an indicator and you could plug in the volume indicator if you wanted to, right? 6 or half dozen the same. So, but I'll just put that on volume, call it good. So, and then for input B, right, if you want to use a fixed value, then we could just put in fixed value and then type in 100, like so, right? And so, right, so the default output is, you can see when the volume is less than 100, remember I set my line here to 100, then we're getting a short output, right, because volume is less than 100. And when volume is greater than 100, we're getting a long output because volume is greater, right? So that's that is the default output settings, right, for the comparison solver. So we need to go into the comparison settings here and just give that window a moment to load up there for the first time. There we go. So what we're interested is when the volume is greater than 100. And probably you're going to want to use greater than or equals to 100. But also the short side, right? We need a short output when the volume is greater than or equal to 100. So now if I hit apply, there we go. So when the volume is less than 100, there is no output. And when the volume is greater than 100, we're getting both a long and a short, right? Because volume doesn't tell you what direction you're trading, right? Volume, yeah, is non-directional. So when you're using a non-directional type of indicator or condition, I'd say 99.9% of the time, you're always going to want a long and a short output. Now, because as said, it's non-directional. So, right, you're going to allow something else to determine the direction of the trade, right? And so, right, so far, that's going to be our bar direction, right? That's going to determine the signal direction there. So there we go. There's one way to set up the comparison. So you can look for a volume spike, above a fixed value, right? Or we could put this back to an indicator, indicator type there. And the indicator, we can go in here and we can then do a search for vol, and there's the volume moving average indicator there. And we could use that instead, right? There we go. So there we go. So we have a little volume spike right there, right? That's greater, right? So anytime the volume is greater than the indicator or the moving average, there you go, right? So it's just a matter of, what you're using to determine that volume, threshold level there, whether it's an indicator or a fixed value. Yeah, I think I'll keep it on the indicator there, because usually that's the question I get asked most of the time, is using the volume moving average indicator. So I'll just kind of keep it with that for now. So, all right. So we have the second component here, which is looking for the volume spikes, and we have the other two components, which is identifying, right, which bar number, within the sequence. So now we need to start combining things. So let's add an AND node. We're going to add two AND nodes actually. And let's separate that. I'll put that in the middle. All right, let's see if we actually get something. Oh yeah, look, there we go. All right, so remember I couldn't find one on the chart when we started this question, but there you go. It's right in front of me now. So there you go. Third bar down, and there is clearly a big volume spike above the moving average there. So there's that one. And then let's see if we find another one. Yeah, there we go. There's an up bar. And then, yep, volume just barely got higher than the moving average there. All right. So this is really the core component of Jerry's question there. So we have the signal counter and the signal blocker, identifying, which bar number, right in the sequence there. And then we have the volume spike. So now, let's see. So we have these, yeah, you know what? Looks like we really didn't need these other components here. But you might need something, how should I say this? Yeah, you might need something similar to this inflection solver if things get more complicated, right? So what I mean by that is, right, I used a very simple condition as to when to start counting, which is a reversal bar, right? So actually, since I'm using reversal bars, I actually didn't need this inflection solver. I guess this just kind of helped, explain the question there. But let's say you have something more complex, like, there we go. Yeah, it's kind of mentioned before. Maybe you're using something more complex, like a long wick. And that's when you start counting, right? You get a long wick and you start counting. There we go. 2 examples. Well, there we go. There's 3 examples. So, yeah, if you're using a condition that's a little more complex as to when you start counting, then that is when you're going to need a solver here to then reset the signal counters, because you're going to have to, yeah, let's see here. So with a Renko, you're still going to need the bar direction to feed, a simple input. But you're also, when you get a little more complex, okay. Yeah, so what you need to do here is, take your node that's identifying that special condition and feed it into a toggle node, like so. Actually, yeah, you know what? Instead of discussing this all theoretical, let's go ahead and build it. So, yeah, let me build a solver that's going to identify bars with wicks here. So, let's see. So I'm just going to move those off to the side. And let's grab another comparison solver. Connect that in. All right, so we're looking for large wicks there. So when you're finding wicks here, right, you're either looking at the low price of the bar or the high price, right? And so you're comparing, right, that the price of that wick to the close of the bar, right? So it'd be the high price compared to the close, or the low price compared to the close, right? And essentially you're looking for a certain length. Actually, you know what? Let me switch that up here. Let me use the bar length. So this guy doesn't get used a lot in questions there. So as kind of mentioned before, a lot of times there is two ways we could accomplish the same thing here. So I could have used the comparison solver, to check, to compare the close to the low or the close to the high. But let's use the bar length. I think that simplifies it a little bit more there. And we could look for, a dynamic changing link there. So actually look at this. The default setting there is already finding all these bars with wicks just using the default settings there, right? Look at that. There you go. Tiny little wick there. That's a 1-tick wick, right? 2-tick wick probably. So by default, right, this is already finding bars there that are at least 1 ATR or more, right? So when you're dealing with Renkos, usually 1 ATR is the body size, right? Because you get so many bars that only have a body and no wick, right? So if we increase the max, right? So in this case, we're looking for a minimum maximum size. Sorry, right? So we're looking for a size greater than the maximum here. So if we increase this, let's say 1.5. Let me see. Yeah, maybe we need to go to 2. There we go. 2's looking a little better. Right? There's some, obviously this is a judgment call here. Let's see. And I'm going to increase it quite a bit here. 2.5. There we go. Shoot. I was hoping it would include those. All right, let's tailor this down a little bit. See if I can get these bars included. No. There we go. All right, so I got that bar included there. All right, so there you go. So we can see the bar length solver makes it a little easier to identify something like that. And of course, you could go in and use a fixed value such as ticks. So if you're working with a specific size Renko bar and you're looking for a 10-tick sized wick or more, right? You could use a tick measurement unit there instead. So, but we'll just go with ATRs for now. Let's see. All right, so we now need to exclude, right, the reversal bar, right? So obviously reversal bars obviously are going to be the longest. Reversal bars are always going to be the longest Renko bar out there. So we need to exclude those reversal bars. So maybe I actually found a life for this inflection solver after all. So let's grab an AND node, connect those two in there, and what I'm going to do with the inflection solver is I'm going to invert it. And turn on that. There we go. Oh, actually, hold on. No, I don't need to invert it. Let's just set slope in direction to 0. Let me turn off the slope against direction to set that to 0. And the no inflection. There we go. That's what I want. Let's see. All right. Let's actually look at what I did to this inflection solver. Right. So now the inflection solver is identifying every bar but a reversal. Right. So we can see all the reversal bars now have no output. Right. No signal. So again, I'm using the no inflection as an output. So, and then you combine that with an AND node, right? So you take our bar length, combine it with an AND node, and now we're able to identify these Renko bars with a wick. So there we go. So there's our triggering condition to start counting. So let's see here. Let's rename this to, there you go, no inflection. All right. Let's see. So now let's connect that in. Hold on, zoom out a little bit. There. Connect that into the toggle node. So let's see, what do we also need here? Yeah, looks like we also need a bar direction in there. Yeah, there we go. All right. So look, with what we have so far, actually it's right. What we have so far, right, is we're getting a long and a short output, right? So we're not actually getting a signal direction here, right? And that's because, right, if we look at what's coming out here, right, we're getting a long and a short out, right? And that's because a bar length is non-directional, right? And when we created this non-reversal bar solver here, right, a non-reversal bar is also non-directional, right? So when you look at both of these, you know, look, this no inflection bar here, or solver, long and short output. This bar length, right, the bar length is defaulted to giving you a long and a short output, right, because the bar length is non-directional. It's a non-directional condition there. So we need something to filter, you know, to tell us what is the direction of the Renko bars here. And so I just simply took this bar direction and connected it in there. And let's take a look at the AND node. There we go. So there we go. So now, yeah, let's see. All right, one other thing we need to clean up, which is, right, you notice how we're getting this little bit of an output here, right? This output increases based on the size of the wick of the Renko there, and that is coming from the bar length solver, right there. Let's connect that in right there, right? And that's our bar length. So the bar length operates in that fuzzy logic mode there, as its default here. And let's see here. Yeah, we're just, let's see. It's been so long since I've used this. All right. Yeah, so what we're going to have to do is we are going to need to use the minimum here to strip out that fuzzy logic capability here. So let me just put this to 2. That should do it. There we go. Right. So the max is, we're looking for at least a bar that's 2.2 ATRs in length. And then the minimum is looking for a 2 ATR. And down here in the output, so when at or below 2 ATRs, we're getting no output. So when we're at or above, at or basically longer than 2.2 ATRs, that's when we're getting an output. Right. So the bar length can help you find small bars by using the at or below, right, the distance, or what in our case we're using the bar length to find long bars. So, and of course that stripped out those 2 bars I was interested in. All right, so let's kind of fine tune this again here. There we go. All right, so it looks like 1.8 is pretty good there. All right, there we go. So now we're back to where we're at. Okay. Good, so we got that bar length kind of dialed in there. So now, again, looking at the AND node. There we go. So now we're actually getting a signal in the direction of the Renko bar when we get those long wicks. All right. So here. And let's see here. All right. So here's another trick, or another, not a trick, but another little tip here is I'm going to disconnect this bar direction just simply so I can keep the leaders looking a little cleaner here. Let's zoom out. And what I'm going to do is instead, let's see, where is it? There we go. So here's our bar direction solver, right? This bar direction is the same as this bar direction right here, right? So I can just drag another one on here. And if you look at the list, right, it didn't make a new one. So this solver and this solver, or I should say these 2 nodes, are one and the same. They're just visually seen on the workboard twice, right? But they're this one and the same, right? So this way I can make things look a little cleaner like this. There we go. So that just visually looks a little cleaner. But you just got to remember that these are one and the same. So if you need to go and mess around with this one, right, to adjust this logic here, remember that's going to adjust this one. It's going to change this one. So it's also going to change this logic, right? So you can get yourself into trouble doing this. So just be mindful when you're doing something like this. And that's why it's also good to always name your solvers here and never have 2 solvers using the same name, right? Make sure that all the solvers have their own unique name. So that way, if you do, do this, for just visual, representation of the leaders here, it'll help you kind of make sure that you don't accidentally change one without realizing, oh, you're going to change the other, right? So use unique naming there when you're building a system. All right, so we have the wick condition found. That's right. And so now let's get back to the toggle node. All right, so there we go. So when we get a long wick, the toggle node turns on, right, until we get a wick in the opposite direction. So what we need is the toggle node to be on here, right, until the bar's reverse direction. So let's see. So we're going to have to build something that will turn the toggle node off. And something simple, right, would be turning this toggle node off when the bar reverses direction there. Right, pretty straightforward. So let's make another inflection solver here. And we're just going to set this inflection solver back to the closing price. Right, so there we go. So we're back to the original inflection solver that we had, right, identifying all the reversal bars. And so we can use these reversal bars to reset the toggle node. And we'll kind of squeeze this up a little bit. So let's connect that into the reset. And then for the toggle node, we have to figure out, okay, which one of these reset options do we need to use? So I already know that this is the one we're going to use, the opposite signal here. But you could just go and just kind of play around with this here, right? But the option that we want is we want to turn the toggle node off, right? So, right, and so we're using the on opposite signal, right, to turn it off. And so why is that? Well, right, so we have, right, for the up bars, right, we have a long output from the toggle node. And what does this down reversal bar make? Right, this down bar makes a short signal. All right, let's take a look at it. Right, there you go. A short signal coming from that down bar. So this short is opposite of what the toggle node is outputting, right? So during the up bars, the toggle node is outputting long. And so this short signal is the opposite of what the toggle node is outputting. So that's why on opposite signal, we're turning it off. Right, that short is opposite of the long output. And there we go. There. So now we have right. So now we have our triggering condition here of when the counting starts, right? And with the toggle node, right, all the bars are identified. Basically, it looks just like this bar direction, right? Remember this bar direction here, right? It starts at the reversal bar, and it stays on until you get to the next reversal bar, right? So, yeah. So now, instead of the bar direction, we could instead connect in this into the signal counter. And let's see, oh, look, there we go. So there's our long wick, and this bar here had a little volume spike there. Let's see, yeah, there we go. We can just barely kind of see it. All right, so one last thing to do is, looking at Jerry's question, right? He says, he wants to look for that volume spike on either bar number 3 or bar number 4. One or the other. So the last thing we need to do is combine them together with an OR node, like so. And there we have. All right, let's see what we have. Oh, look, there we go. All right, so there's a long wick, and if you've ever worked with Renko bars, you pretty much know that a bar that has a wick on it is going to have a higher volume, right, than the other bars there. So it's not surprising that we see signals on a Renko bar with wicks. So, but here we go. We had a wick, and let's actually see if. No, okay, so that wick wasn't quite long enough, but this one was. All right, so that's why we didn't get any signals down here, because that wick was not quite long enough. But here we go. Here is a long wick, and I have a feeling. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, okay, so that's the 4th bar. So that was the 5th bar. Yeah, so that 5th bar had the volume spike on it, but that was the 5th bar. So there we go. So long wick, bar 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think that wick was long enough. Let's take a look. Yeah, so the counting started with this one here. So there we go. All right. Let's see. Let's do one last little thing here. Let's yeah, right. So when we're looking at the final result, right, we can't really see which bar is actually triggered the counting here. So this is just kind of another little generic tip here, where you can sometimes get 2 pieces of information to show up at the same time here. So what I'm going to use is an OR node. Right? And this OR node, right, is connected to basically our toggle node, right, that finds that long wick there. And with this OR node, I'm going to go to the Options tab, and I'm going to reduce the output. Let's say 0.2. Actually, let's go 0.5. Or, yeah, 0.5. 0.4. All right, 0.4. So we can see we're getting an output, right? But it's not producing a racing stripe. So it's not actually technically a signal, right? It's just an output there. If we connect that in, and then connect this in, now we can actually see, so there we go. So here's a bar that actually has a signal on it, right? But we can also see now, right, here's the bar with the wick, right, the long wick, that started the counting, right? It started the counting. So, yeah, so basically if you have kind of, I guess what you would call kind of like a prerequisite signal, right? So essentially looking for this long wick is a prerequisite signal here. And if you want to be able to see that along with the actual final trading signal, right? So once you feed that prerequisite into this other, your second set of logic here, or second set of conditions, that's what produces your ultimate trading signal. So if you want to kind of be able to see a prerequisite signal, this trick here with an OR node, right? Take an OR node, reduce the output there, and just put that OR node between your prerequisite signal and your output there. So sometimes you actually need to add an extra OR node, right? Because a lot of systems, they will just end with a single AND node, right? But in this case, right, our system actually ended with an OR node because we have 2 separate conditions here that had to be combined together. So normally you actually have to add 2 OR nodes because usually you only have 1 AND node at the very end. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, this little trick with adding an OR node, reducing its output, feeding it into another OR node, then you can see two outputs at the same time. Yeah, so there we go. We can see that on these down bars, we had a long wick, and we can see the output, but we didn't actually get a volume spike, during that little downtrend. So, and who knows? Maybe this bar that's forming here. There we go. That bar that formed. There we go. That was our little long wick bar. We actually saw that happening. Let's see. All right, so I'm actually going to clean things up here. Let's get rid of that node. I'll keep this here. We'll keep this down here. There. And also, since I deleted, so remember when you delete a node off of the logic board here, it doesn't remove it from the master list. So this solver still exists and it's still doing some kind of work there. So it's a good idea to go ahead and delete solvers that are not being used. So you always want to keep your master list of solvers lean and clean so that the computer is not having to do extra work, extra calculations that are never being used. And lastly, let's give this a name here. There we go. All right. And I guess lastly here, remember the question was, well, maybe sometimes you want to find the third and fourth, or maybe you want to find the second and the third. And so again, adjusting, adjusting which bar number you're looking for. Again, so I mentioned this earlier, but just to make sure, that's a matter of adjusting the signal counter, right? So in the name, remember I put it in the name that this is looking for the third signal there. So going back to the properties tab there, right? This is counting the third bar, right? And this one here is counting the fourth bar. And just remember that if you reduce this value, see if I go from 4 down to 2, you'll also need to reduce the look back period down to 2 as well. Keep those two numbers exactly the same. Right. And also remember to change the name so that way you're not misled when you're looking at the names here. So there you go. So this is actually finding the third and the second bar now with those volume spikes. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. All right. So I'm actually going to go put this back to its original state. Here. All right. So I gave that OR node a name as well. That way we know what it's doing there, right? So it has that 0.2, or actually, I'm sorry, 0.2 is what I usually do. I actually set it to 0.4. That's right, to 0.4, and it's telling us when that long wick signal occurs. All right.